smell, and teeth.
Hi.
Hello.
Today, it's just like a little pregnant pause there, wasn't there? Today,
It's just dread. It's a feeling of dread. What are you going to ask me?
No, it's easy. It's easy today.
Oh, go on, then.
It's something which to me is a contradiction of terms. And I want you to explain mid-side. Because everybody's talking about it.
You mean summon difference?
Now, hang on. That sounds like that's different.
No. Mid-side is like this consumer idea of what it is. Some difference is the proper definition of the matrix that's being used.
Okay, now you're talking about it having a proper definition, and it having a matrix makes me think that it's not something that's brand new, like everyone says.
It's not this new thing that suddenly pops up. It's actually in the 1930s. I think it was 1933. Alan Blumlein came up with the Blumlein configuration of coincident microphone positionings, which gave us the idea of mid-side matrices. And then from there, I say mid-side because that's what he called it.
Yeah.
But the actual matrix that does it is called a sum and difference. And we started to use transformers in mixing desks from there to create the sum difference, where we use primary. I'm not going to go into the technology of it. But
You've just absolutely blown me head, and my hair had straightened it today. Now it's all curly. Right. Now you've just done that, and you've kind of blown my mind a bit. I now want you to explain it.
Oh dear. Right. The thing is, right, when we say the term mid-side, the immediate thing that everyone thinks is, right, I just take all the information that's mono in the middle and the side is all just the stereo information, but it doesn't quite work like that, which is why the true definition is sum and difference.
Okay.
So what happens in a sum and difference matrix, I'm going to simplify this because I've only got 15 minutes, so don't
I
quote
know,
me
and I
on this.
can't afford any extra animation.
Yeah. So what we're going to do is, to get the mid, the middle section, or at least the sum, what we do is we get left signal plus right signal equals the sum, or mid. I'll call it mid-side now so people understand. So left plus right equals mid.
Okay.
Left minus right, which is actually left plus phase inverted right, basically, that's your difference or your sides.
Okay.
Right? So sum is left plus right, sides is left minus right. It's actually left plus phase inverted, but we'll just say minus right.
Okay. So now you've just kind of explained it to us. When should we be using it? You know, is it what stage? You know, production, mixing, mastering. Can you give us a?
Originally, it was used in mastering, but now everyone's jumping onto it in mixing, thinking that it can do loads of magical things because they don't understand how the mid-side matrix actually works.
Okay.
I mean, one of the big problems we've got, I need to talk about panning first.
Yeah, that because people just get confused about all of that as well.
Right. Well, actually, let's say I've got a stereo sound, and it is sat in the centre.
Yeah.
Even though it's stereo, it's sat in the centre. If I pan it to the left by 6 decibels and I pan it to the right by 6 decibels, right?
Yeah.
When you mono that mix, it will come back together and equal 12 decibels because we've got 6 on the left, 6 on the right. But when we sum to centre, we divide it by 2.
Yeah.
So we've got 6 on the left, 6 on the right, comes back together, it's 12, we divide it by 2, it's 6 decibels.
Yeah.
Same volume when we mono it. If I have a single sound, a mono sound, and I pan it to the left by 6 decibels, when we mono that mix, it will come back to the centre as 6 decibels. We divide it by 2, we got 3 decibels. So it becomes quieter in mono.
Yeah.
Now, let's apply this now to a sum difference engine or mid-side or whatever you want to call it. Let's imagine that we've got left plus right equals mono.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one part. That's a mono signal can affect. Now, when we get left minus right, that's a secondary mono signal. So basically, we're working with 2 mono signals here.
Right.
As confusing as this sounds.
Yeah.
So,
go on, I'm pedaling fast. I'm keeping up.
What's going to happen here, if I've taken, let's say we've got this huge synth, this huge EDM synth sound, and I've panned it to the left. And I suddenly switch to mid-side, and I'm like, right, well, I've got my mids here, and I can affect them. And I've got this huge synth at the sides, and I can affect that individually. That's not how it works. Remember that the middle is left plus right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that gives you mid signal.
Yeah.
Now, remember that your side signals is left minus right,
Yeah.
which means that that EDM synth you pan to the left also appears in your mids.
Right.
So you've got to remember this, that when you are using mid-side, anything that's panned to the left is going to appear in the center at the same time. That's going to cause problems if you're processing.
Okay. Wow, my hair is really bloody curly today. Right, okay, so I'm pedaling on fast and I'm trying to keep up. Okay, because a lot of the stuff I've been reading, it talks about using it as a volume control.
You have to be very, very, very careful when you're playing with any mid-side information, because one of the problems you've got, is, let's say I have a mix, and what I've done is I've got vocals.
Yeah.
That for some bizarre, inexplicable reason, I've panned to the left.
Okay.
Right? And all of a sudden, I've got this mix, and I said, right, what I'm going to do, I'm going to compress the mids.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to compress the sides differently.
Yeah.
Right, well, I compress the mids. Now, remember that the left-hand side is going to appear in the mids, as well as the sides. What's going to happen is I've got one compressor working on the mids. Yeah, that's going to be affecting the vocal that's sat in the left-hand speaker.
Yeah.
And then I put a compressor on the left-hand vocal as well, thinking I'm going to compress that differently to add space. Right, well, the problem is I'm going to get a push-pull effect.
Yeah.
Because that left vocal's also in the mids as well.
I was going to say it's...
Yeah, so the compressor's acting on one action, and then I've got a compressor acting in another action in the left speaker, and I've got this fight between the two, and I get a weird push-pull effect. And this is the problem that people don't understand. They don't understand that whatever's in your left speaker is going to appear in the mids as well. So you cannot... It's not a complete separation. We're not saying we only affect the mono and we only affect the stereo. It doesn't work like that. It's a sum difference engine. This is the key aspect. And this is why a lot of people are really messing shit up using mid-side, because they get this confusion. We should be calling it sum difference.
Right, yeah, because as you say, people are confusing the fact that audio is being completely separated and they're just dealing with, say, one thing at a time, and they're dealing with several. They forget that it has a counter effect.
Yeah, even your phase inverted right, because we do left plus phase inverted right, which is really left minus right. Even that phase inversion is going to appear in the center as well. These are things you've really got to consider when you start using mid-side.
So when people are talking about using it, say, as a volume control to make sounds bigger, what they're basically
saying
there is... I can see you tilting your head and going,
Yeah, well, what they're basically saying is we leave the mids alone. Yeah. I mean, this is so complex to discuss on a podcast.
I know, but it's good. Gets you thinking.
Well, yeah. I mean, the whole point of these podcasts, I suppose, is to get people thinking a little bit more about what we're talking about, and it's not as simple as you always think it is. They're saying basically we take the mids and we leave those alone. Then we go out to the side information, which is the difference engine, and we boost that volume. Now, by boosting that volume, it will make everything appear wider because the stereo information, this is their thought process, the stereo information will be louder than the mono information in the middle. Therefore, it will sound wider and more magical.
Yeah.
But now let's translate that into real engineering and talk about a sum and difference engine. If you push up the side information, not that difference, if you've got something that's just panned to the left, it's also in the center as well, you're going to start creating weird effects. This is what we need to consider whenever we're working with any form of sum and difference. It's fine turning the sides up if everything's equal on both sides.
Okay.
It's such a complex thing.
If you could see me now, folks, my hair's curling, my eyes are open, and I'm like, what the? Okay.
This is the thing. It's such a complex subject that they've tried to simplify in so many, and just to sell plugins. Oh, mid-side, here you go. And everyone's thinking it's just mono and stereo, and it's not. Mid-side is mono and mono.
I was going to say, another thing that I see thrown around is that it's used for making your bass mono.
You could do, because typically, I mean, it's the bizarrest way of doing it, but I suppose you could kind of set EQs on mid-side in certain ways to make sure your bass is mono. You might as well just use a plugin for that has the Matrix set up for you. Why are you making it so complicated for yourself? Because they're basically saying that a bass will be in the center of the mix, and if there's stereo information...
So you're just saying, instead of making some, which I completely understand, instead of trying to use...
The problem is, you can say your bass is stereo, but if there's more leaning towards the left than there is to the right, imagine how you're going to screw up your mix, because remember, your left appears in your mid. your left is part of your sum. So that's going to appear in the center as well. I mean, it'll be 3 decibels quieter, say, if we're using a 6 decibel. Like I said, we've got half it. Like I said, this is an incredibly complex subject to just bring up in a podcast. But, yeah,
I do like to get you thinking.
I think it's just it's important that people begin to understand that you don't have this total separation of stereo and mono. You've got to start treating them as when you work in some difference, you have 2 mono signals.
Which is really maybe what I actually did want to talk to you about. And, this is maybe a convoluted way of just getting to it, but chatting with other people about audio, they often seem to think that they can sort of isolate. And I know we can isolate audio, don't get me wrong. I'm not that naive and stupid, but you've got to remember that when you do something to one piece of audio, it will often have an effect on some other audio. If you in what we do in music,
everything in audio has a cost. It's like if we look at amplitude modulation, we're going to get sideband information. It's a cost of it.
Which is my take home from this today is that we've scratched the surface of something, and as you said, it's a deep one, and I want people to maybe feel, oh, that's interesting. Let's go away and learn about it, and think about it before they just apply it.
Yeah, I mean, my advice is do not use it unless it's incredibly creative application. I mean, you could do something quite silly, like you could say, you leave your sum information alone, and I'll call it mid-side. You leave your mid information alone and you play with your sides, and maybe, you'll put a compressor on your side triggered by the kick. Right. So what will happen then is your kick triggers your sides. So what will happen is every time the kick appears, your sides will collapse in stereo a little, and you'll kind of get a nice breathing effect, which might be a creative application of it.
Right.
You could try something like that as a creative feel. See, everything's moving, but be careful what's panned to your left and what's panned to your right. You'd have to have things equally moved.
It's like user beware.
Very much so. Mid-side is one of the most dangerous plugins you can start to play with unless you truly understand what you're doing. And the problem is that everyone's throwing it in plugins and going, here you go, here you play with this, it'll sound great.
Yeah.
So it's something that use in a creative manner, but be very, very cautious. And always think that you are sum and difference. You're working with 2 mono signals. You're not suddenly going, there's my mono and there's my stereo. It doesn't work like that.
Cool. Thank you very much for explaining that. You did very well, actually, because it isn't an easy one to explain, folks, on a little podcast.
No, it's incredibly difficult. And this is the problem.
God, I hope we haven't switched you all off, My 2 subscribers have gone to 0.
And the one important thing I'm going to say is read more about it. Be very, very cautious. If you can, avoid some difference engines. Just don't bother. Let your mastering engineer play with all that shit. But explaining it, as you know, because we were talking about this the other week, I suspect this is where it's coming from. It's incredibly complex to compress something like this down into a 15-minute chat without getting right into the science of what we're actually doing. I mean, I've got to say here that it's more complex than I've made it out to be. The matrix, the sum difference matrix, is a lot more complicated. There's a bit more math going on, but I've tried to simplify it down just to...
Well, I mean, like I say, these podcasts, folks, are just to sort of get your interest and to show you that there's more to it than just, maybe dragging samples across, and to help you build your interest and your knowledge.
Yeah, that's the whole point. You just forget about, I'm just affecting the mono and now I'm affecting the stereo. No, you're not. You're not. You're screwing with the signal in a serious way.
Okay, I like that though. That's interesting. I'm going to learn more about that. Thank you very much.
You're going to learn more about it. You already know it.
You can never know enough, folks.
It's Mo and